Welcome to the Disc Golf Prescription Podcast, your weekly dose of disc golf. Hello and welcome to the Disc Golf Prescription Podcast. I'm your host, John Nicholson, and today we have a very special guest. We have one of the most promising FPO players, not only just in Texas, but maybe on tour in the world with us today, Caroline Henderson. How are you doing today, Caroline?
Good, I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Really quick before we get started, if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, all the things in all the wrong orders that time, I'm pretty sure. If you are listening on a podcast app, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us to be more discoverable on all the different podcast apps. And last but not least, if you are watching or listening, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. With all of that being said, you ready to get started, Caroline?
I am.
Awesome. So I always like to ask people about their athletic backgrounds. I have a kinesiology background, so I'm just really interested in that in general. And then especially when I see people just pop up seemingly out of nowhere, I'm always very curious, like what sports did you used to play?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, I played everything. So it was like basketball. The only thing I didn't play was soccer. I didn't like the shin pads, but it was like basketball, maybe a little bit of volleyball, softball and stuff. But I did start committing to softball when I was 10. Like I started pitching around 10 and I started pitching at 8 and then I started playing select around 10, pushing 11. And so that's kind of like what I did through high school. I also played some track. I ran some track. I ran the 100 hurdles, the 300 hurdles, and then I ran, I think, the 1200 distance competitions. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So pretty diverse background apart from the uncomfortable shin guards. Yes. And by the way, that anytime I hear somebody say played before something where played like sounds funny, my memory gets jogged because I used to be really big into bowling. And anytime somebody said like, "Oh, do you play bowling?" I'm like, "Oh, no, I just bowl, I guess. I don't know." And so, no, I liked it. Played track I feel like it's very similar. You caught it right away. You were like, played. I ran track. That's perfect. So you did a lot of things, a very diverse background. Was there anything in particular you ended up continuing to more of a higher level?
Oh yeah, it was softball. So I had played select all the way up until my junior year, and I was super competitive. I always played in a division above. So if I was in 16 and under, I was playing in 18U. So if anyone doesn't know, junior year is your commitment year, and that's when you get to talk to colleges and stuff. Typically beforehand, it's done through your coach. That I broke a vertebrae in my back, and so I don't know how it happened. There wasn't a moment where I was like, "Ow, that happened." And so I just kind of kept playing on it. I was like, man, this kind of hurts. And it was like a month later, I was like, this hurts a lot. And so I ended up getting it all checked out, and it was that way. And so it took about a year to heal. And by that time, it was my senior year, and I hadn't played softball in a year. But once I graduated high school, I was supposed to walk on to Texas Women's University and play, but things just didn't feel right. And I was like, you know what? This isn't my calling, and I'm A-okay with this. So instead, I got a job at my batter's box, which is a indoor baseball softball facility in Prosper. And so from 2015 to last November, I taught girls how to pitch and hit.
That's awesome.
That's where my technical background comes from. But I've always still worked out, I've been throwing and pitching a ball since then.
Okay, no, that's very cool. Apart from the broken vertebrae or fractured vertebrae thing, that is. Though I've heard of a few of those injuries. Connor O'Reilly, I was wondering who it was. Good friend of mine, Connor. He had a very similar sort of back injury. Nothing that was ever like he knew when it happened. Like, he didn't know. It just, like,
Yeah.
pain developed over time. But he was playing high school basketball when that happened. So it's kind of crazy how those
They just
fractured vertebrae injuries can develop.
Yeah,
Well,
I
okay.
think my only guess was I was like sliding into second base, and this might have been the moment, but it was like really dense. It had just rained, so it was super dense dirt, and I kind of felt my heels click my helmet because when I hit, I stopped. It just kind of like, eek. So that's the only thing I could think of. That was the reason that happened.
Just a full-blown scorpion into second base, huh? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
man. Yeah, I guess that could do it. But yeah, if you didn't feel it right afterwards, it's hard to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So really big into softball and just throwing in general, which explains the awesome forehand, which we are definitely going to talk about a little bit later. And when did you come across, or how did you even come across disc golf, and when did you start playing?
Yeah, so my husband was a COVID disc golfer. So we have a friend named Brody Smith. It's not the Brody Smith, it's Brodi. Yeah. And so he like YouTubed his name and found like all of Brody's like ultimate videos and some of his disc golf. And he's like, well, you know, I've played ultimate. I want to try it. And so him and CJ, my husband, went out and played a little bit. I brought the dogs and they were like, you should play. And I was like, I'm like too competitive to the point where it's not fun. Like, it's like, I'm mad. And so over some time, I decided it probably took like 2 or 3 months. I decided to kind of pick up a disc and chunk it. And of course, it only goes like 60 feet because I have never touched a Frisbee before that point. And now I'm throwing disc golf Frisbees, which is not a Walmart Frisbee.
Mm-mm.
And yeah, it's very different. And so I started playing. I got a little bit too competitive, like I said. And so I kind of started practicing on my own. And we started watching some coverage because, you know, he was interested. I'm like, why not? It's, you know, it's cool. And so we started watching the females and he's like, I really think you should play. He's like, I don't think they're doing anything, you know, crazy enough that you can't do. He's like, you're athletic. He's like, you're smart. He's like, you can do this. And I was like, okay, I'll really start practicing. And so I was still working at the time. So I was only practicing like 3 days a week. And I kind of started getting it, wasn't consistent. And over time, like I got better and better. I started practicing more and more. And last November rolled around and I was playing VPO with Holland and Kat and Maria. And round 1, I like hung in with Holland. Like we had the same score. And I was like, what? And so that was a decision to, I ended up quitting my job and focusing complete full time on disc golf. So probably it was around the end of 2020 when I started fully practicing.
Okay, awesome. So I love what you say about competitive people. Like, no, I don't know that I can play. I either need to be all out on this or all in on this, and I will either destroy you with this. No, because I think every competitive person can kind of identify with that statement. At least I definitely can. Like when I met you and CJ, it was at a disc golf not event. It was like a disc golf party of sorts. Yeah, with Early Recognition is Critical and Greg Barsby's High Energy Tour. And so disc golf, funny enough, is like the thing I'm least competitive in a sense of I take it as not that I don't care. I very much care. I very much try hard. It's like in every other head-to-head sport, I want to absolutely destroy the person I am playing against. Like, no mercy. We aren't friends until we're done. In disc golf, it's more framed of me playing against the course. Yes, I want to beat people, but I'm not like so aggressive in needing to beat them right then and there in every moment. Like when I met, yeah, it's a little different in that way. When I met you and CJ, I was playing ping pong, and my aggressiveness comes out and competitiveness comes out in ping pong very much so. It's funny to say that I'm much more competitive at ping pong than I am in disc golf, but
I get it. I'm the same way with board games. It's like even Monopoly. It's like why cards can't do it, but disc golf I can keep a level head.
It is interesting that it's like that in that way. I guess I was kind of like that in the little bit of golf that I played semi-competitively as well. But yeah, maybe it's just the nature of the game, which is probably
the nature of the game.
Probably a little bit more healthy for competitive people in that case too.
It is. And it's kind of nice because like what at least I've experienced with like everyone on the cards is they're not like that either. Maybe internally, but everyone's really nice. Like they're focused on their game, but they're not like in softball we were like, I'm gonna hit this ball hard, I'm gonna run you over. But no.
In disc golf, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna throw a good drive, then we're gonna chill. I'm gonna walk to it. You throw another good shot, I'm gonna chill. It's a lot more level-headed for sure. Mm-hmm. So you started playing really practicing, you said, at the end of 2020 then. Mm-hmm. It's the beginning of 2023, so if I'm doing my math right, which I hope I am, it's really only just over 2 years later. Mm-hmm. And you have decided to go on tour, which is awesome. I was really excited when you guys were talking to me about that back when we met in December. And so, gosh, completely lost in my notes right now. I'll be perfectly honest about that. We had talked about your background with a lot of softball and throwing and things like that. What sort of skills do you think transferred from that sporting background?
Yeah, we'll talk about the backhand first. Backhand is like left-handed top hand swing. It's because like you kind of like when after you kind of drive, you like snap to that extension point. That's what I find that is the most translatable for backhand. Now in hitting, we don't take those few steps, and so that was kind of hard to learn how to X step with the opposite feet, because like softball is just shuffle, right? Like you'd field and shuffle the ball. So that's what it kind of translated for backhand. And plus you have the hip rotation, so that kind of gives you, helps you with your legs. But forehand took me a minute to figure out, because as much as baseball and softball translates to forehands, it also does not translate to forehands, because you do sometimes find yourself pronating when you snap something. Like I know you're not supposed to do that, but sometimes, it's just a little different. You're also throwing from up here. And so softball pitching is a little bit different than that, because it's not so pronated. It's more like straight up and down, right? It's more here, which is literally forehand stabs. And so when we were trying to figure out how to throw the forehand correctly, we were out in the field, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to start in a K position. Like with softball, I'm just going to snap it. I'm just going to go under and I'm going to snap it. And it goes like 360. CJ's like, dude, that was sick. How did you do that? I was like, I have no clue. But it was easy because when you snap the disc, it should be like really close to when you're like, you start like driving into your front heel. So it's like, he'll snap. And softball pitching's like the same way. And so we kind of worked out the kinks once we figured out those couple moves.
That is super cool how well you were able to transfer some of those movement patterns you had already developed into your disc golf game. And I know a little bit about throwing mechanics from like a baseball perspective. I know nothing about softball mechanics. So that was really cool information to hear there. Yeah, whenever I'm it's super interesting. Whenever I'm teaching forehands, some of the biggest things I talk about are like I'm very much, I agree with Stokely on a lot of the things he teaches, where he's just like, don't think about it so much. Literally just throw a ball. And then the only problem is people who've had a lot of experience throwing a ball, especially baseball, is they have a ton of issues with pronation at the very end. Because when you throw a ball, you pronate every single time. Like it's what you do. It's how you throw a ball the most powerfully. And exactly. And so disc golf, if you were to just throw a ball and you can, most time you lean over to help a little bit, but you could just lower your arm slot a little bit. You can throw a disc the exact same way. You just have to take out the pronation. And for some people who have that ingrained, it's just very, very difficult, which is why it's a lot easier to throw overstable discs.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. It's like, that's why I have some people like, I throw like nuke OSs, and I'm like, you don't have the form to throw a nuke OS for a forehand. It's like, it's because you're rolling it over, you're torquing it instead of staying, flat.
Yep, absolutely. You can always tell the super clean releases and people who have just the plane of their swing and the plane of their release online whenever that disc just comes out just super clean and crisp. Like I was watching I told you before we started, I was watching the Final Nine coverage, Final Nine coverage, goodness. The final round coverage, front nine, of you and Holland playing in Las Vegas. You also had Alexis Mondahano on the card and Hina Blomros. Don't want to just shout out 2 of the 4 players. But just watching y'all throw some forehands in that coverage was awesome because both of y'all were just getting super clean releases on your forehands. And it's very cool to watch technically sound forehands, especially in starting to really come up through FPO, because that's been something until I don't want to disparage Jessica Weiss because she has a great forehand. I'm sure there's somebody else who I'm missing, Owen Scoggins. But until Kristen, we really weren't seeing a lot of forehands in the FPO division, apart from some of those, and I'm sure some that I missed. So it's really cool to see that it's being executed at a super high level now in FPO, and it's getting more and more popular to be doing that.
Really cool. It's going to change the game.
Oh, 100%.
It's people to start having to learn beforehand.
Yep. I mean, even you can see it in Paige's game lately. Like, she's been trying to incorporate forehand more and more. She sees it. She's like, dang, I need this in my game. So it's definitely going to change it moving forwards.
Oh yeah.
Well, we just keep getting on these like side tangents, and I am losing myself in my notes, but I'm having just fun talking about those mechanical things and competitiveness, all the good stuff right there. So you didn't start that long ago. What were your strengths and weaknesses when you started? And how have those changed? And if you feel comfortable, what are kind of your strengths and weaknesses now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my strongest one that I developed first was just like backhand upshots. Because, when you're early and playing, like, you just shank drives. Like, it's just shank, shank, shank. So it's like you get used to just learning how to get some like touch on the disc. And so I've been doing that since day one. And so it definitely has helped. Putting and the backhand took a long time to figure out. Even putting, I'm still kind of on the fence about it, but backhand took me a while to, 1, be able to throw hard, and 2, put it where I want it. Cause like I got it to the point where I was like, well, I can throw hard, but I was like, I don't know where it's going. But forehand was actually, we just talked about this. It was like my weakest point besides like putting. Like, I was a backhand dominant player for the first several months of playing.
Interesting. I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, I know. People say, they're like, really? And I'm like, no, but it was nice. But like, once I figured it out, it clicked. So backhand still has its big ups and downs. Now it's more like this, but like forehand, like once I hit it, it hit. And now it was just like this. Like, I just had to make sure I wasn't like pulling and dragging my shoulder. So I wasn't like over or under rotating my arm, however you want to say it. So it's just kind of those things that had to get, worked out over time.
Okay,
but
awesome. So
putting is the one that I need to kind of figure itself out, and some forehand angle control. It's a lot better, but I have like a nice default angle, and that's where I try to stick with it. I have confidence to do other things with it, like a hyzer or even some Annie, but I'd rather keep it on that angle just for consistency's sake.
Gotcha. So I find that putting is, in most people, the hardest thing to kind of catch up, especially when you get really good really quickly. The only person who I've kind of seen be an anomaly to that is Brody. Brody was very good at putting right away. Brody also put a ton of work into putting right away. But in general, the people who I see get good really fast, the slowest thing to catch up is putting. So that is typical. But I watched you. What was it? Hole 2, you had like a 25-footer on your final round front 9 coverage. I'm going to keep throwing that in there. Ace Run Pro, by the way. I'll shout out everybody. But just stepped up to it, looked as confident as could be, drained it. So like you've got it in there. It's just
it's the timing. It's like, I guess, because forehand time, I've been throwing forever, so I understand timing. It's like backhand timing, I figured out this off season, but like putting timing is like, I just don't feel it. I guess because I'm so focused on that chain, like my body doesn't register what's moving at different paces and what's not.
No, absolutely. I think I think the biggest thing in, no matter you're talking forehand, backhand, putting, is having a timing that you can come back to. And I tell this to people I work with in lessons all the time. It's like, it's one thing to go out, you're feeling good, everything's clicking. Like, yeah, that's easy. What happens when you show up to the course and nothing's clicking? Do you have a baseline timing that you can go back to? And maybe it won't be a great day, but you can still have a pretty good day because you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, when you're supposed to be doing it, and you can find some semblance of the correct timing even on a day when you're off, quote unquote, at least.
100%. That's what I'm missing for my putting. And I've been working on it on the off season, but like backhand timing was like, I needed to figure that out, and it did. But yeah, it's the putting. Like, yeah, it's that little meta.
And I know you will figure it out as well, and you're gonna have a lot of fun figuring it out on tour, because that's like, gosh, so much putting happens. I feel like just in and around like tour events, like when you go out and you do a practice round at a course, like people are throwing crazy amounts of putts on each hole, and I kind of miss that because when I practice in Dallas, all the courses are so packed. I'm like, all right, I get 2 putts in.
I know. And then you're like looking back, like, I'm uncomfortable, but I want to throw like 4 more putts. And then you rush them and then they go everywhere. And you're like, that was just worthless.
Yep. It definitely happens that way on some crowded courses sometimes. There was one other thing I wanted to say, once again, going off on a tangent, because you were talking about backhand being weird to figure out. That's another thing that's really interesting, because I liked how you equated it to kind of a left-handed swing. I forget what you said. You said top something.
Oh, yeah,
top hand. Gotcha. Left-handed top hand swing.
No,
cool.
Bottom hand.
I know.
Bottom hand. It's bottom hand. My bad. I was thinking right hand. Yeah, top hand. No, it's bottom hand. Yeah.
Okay, left-handed, bottom-handed swing. You're good, because I know I can talk about throwing in baseball or softball. Well, not really throwing in softball, but I cannot talk about hitting whatsoever, because I played a single game of t-ball. I told my dad, I am so bored, I don't want to play anymore. And so he said, okay, you don't have to. And I've never played t-ball, baseball, anything ever again, unless we were just like randomly hitting stuff in the neighborhood when I was young. So like, I know nothing about hitting. But the backhand in disc golf is so unique because there's not really another movement pattern like it. And so I see people come into disc golf and they can immediately figure out like, oh, I can adapt throwing as I know it to a disc, and I can get very good at throwing forehands very, very quickly because I've done a very similar version of this movement pattern my entire life. I've never seen somebody come in and just throw a great backhand right away, because there's no other movement pattern in any other sports that's exactly like it. And so it's just kind of this really weird thing that you have to develop in order, specifically for disc golf. You don't, even from Ultimate Frisbee, like you don't throw like you throw in disc golf.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Totally.
So, once again, got off on that and completely just got lost in my notes. When did you start thinking, I think I can make a career out of this disc golf thing? You mentioned that after VPO, when you tied Holland, that you were like, I might just quit my job and go all in on this. Was that the time? Had you started thinking about it before that at all?
Yeah, so that was the official line. That was like, I was kind of sitting at the 80-90% mark, but when I was kind of sitting at the 10 to 20% mark, it was kind of crazy. I was out at the Alex Clark, disc golf course out in McKinney, and I wasn't even throwing well, but I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. This is a lot of work. I'm not old, but I'm not 20 either. And this guy, this couple from Michigan was here for a wedding, and he's like, we played the round together, and I was packing up and stuff, and I wasn't happy because I threw my favorite trust in the water. It had a dolphin drawn on the bottom of it, and I'm like, I'm never going to get this back because of the poachers. And so he comes up to me and he was like, he's like, I'm not being weird. He's like, I really think, he's like, I think you were kind of born to play disc golf. He's like, I see your talent, I see your athleticism. He's like, for how long you think you've been playing? You said you've been playing. He's like, it's really impressive. His name's Rex Roscoe. So that's a shout out if he gets to listen to this. And so from then I was like, so people see this, and CJ's like, yeah, I'm telling you. He's like, these aren't my rose colored glasses telling you things. So that's what I thought it was. And so that was when I kind of kicked it up to the 50 to 60% mark. And I continued to watch coverage, and I'm like, I can do that. It's like, I've been doing this. I can do it. I just need time. And so that was kind of like how it really started, was, that random guy from Michigan telling me that I was like decent and good and had a ton of potential.
That's so awesome. And then you tied Holland at VPO, and you're like, you know what? It's on. I'm doing this.
Yeah. I told CJ, I was like, I can't believe I did that. And of course the other rounds were a little sketchy because I didn't, it's because I didn't putt as well. It's like I was throwing 960 rounds, but I was putting like an 880. So it's okay. We already talked, it's gonna come.
Yeah. Once that putting catches up, which it will soon, the throwing and the like solid foundation is there. So I'm excited to see what you can do this year. Like segueing again, we're in like the very first section. I don't know if we're ever gonna get out of this of my notes, because there's like 4 sections and we're still in the first one. But I always keep up with scores. I like keeping up with people I know on UDisc, whether I'm working or whatever I'm doing. I'm checking it pretty frequently. And so I was looking at FPO, and I was just like scrolling. I don't know what this says about me either. I start at the bottom of the leaderboard. So I don't like to start with like, oh yeah, they're doing awesome, and go to like, ooh, what happened to them? I like to start with, ooh, what happened to them, and go up to, oh, they're doing awesome. Finish positively. And I was scrolling up, and I was like, holy crap, Caroline's through like 14 holes, I think is when I first checked or something. I think you were at even par on the first round. And I was like, holy crap, she's like tied for 4th. Then you were like tied for 3rd, and then tied for 4th again. And I was like, she is crushing it out there. So that was really, really cool to see.
Yeah. Infinite played really well to like my specific distances. It's like some of the holes were exactly what, because I was throwing my blue Page Pierce nuke on most of the holes. And so it's like, if I just give it this angle, it's going to go this distance. And sure enough, like every hole was that distance. And so I was putting myself like, it definitely in circle 1 most of the time, but I was putting myself like 2 feet outside bullseye on a lot of those like far distance throws.
That's awesome. It's great, especially when you feel like you're struggling with putting a little bit, especially with the conditions as windy as Vegas were, to just
Windy.
not have to stress about it whatsoever.
Right.
Just tap it in.
Exactly.
All right. So back. You're like, yes. Back on track a little bit, because I am going to talk to you about Vegas later. But first, if you could go back, and I talked to you about this briefly beforehand. I think it's funny to say if you could go back in your disc golf career, because it's just at its beginning right now. But if you could go back and change something about how you started or anything like that, with everything you know now, what would you change?
For sure. I have 3 things. So one, it would be to master the standstill on the tee. Because it's like, if you can get some like glidey discs that aren't super stable, you can throw them kind of far. You may not be throwing as much as your guy friends, talk about us girls, but I would, learn the standstill, and then maybe learn how to like take a step into that move and then go, and then work on your X step. Because like I started watching pros, and so I'm like doing this run up, and I'm like, I can't time this at all. And so I think that would have kind of helped accelerate how to learn timing earlier. So that was kind of, that's the big one. The second one would be not throwing so many stable discs early on either. Because, again, all my guy friends were like, try this Zeus. And I'm like, yeah, to the girl who can only throw it, I don't know, 80 feet. Let's give her a Zeus. It's like, maybe give her a diamond, or, maybe an Undertaker, or like I don't know, something not so beefy. The other thing would be like putt. Like, I would start putting from like 15 and in until you can make, 50 in a row, and then put it out at like 17 and 18, because I kind of started trying to putt too far out. And so it became army and pushy instead of like kind of getting that really nice, smooth, super clean release. Those would be the things that I would have gone back and changed.
Awesome. I love that you were just like, you know what? I've got 3 of those things. So we're going to we're going to jump on those right away. That is awesome. Well, it sounds like you figured those out and have been working on changing those things already. So that is great news moving forwards. And you're already out on tour. That was your very first Disc Golf Pro Tour event, right?
Yeah. I did like a Silver Series in Missouri last year. We weren't prepared for that course. It was completely different in Texas. That's the only other thing I've done that was, above an A tier. Well, I guess maybe Silver Series are A tiers, aren't they? Or no?
They are, I believe, technically A tiers. The Silver Series have always technically been A tiers, but they're kind of their own classification because they are Silver Series.
Yeah, it was my first true.
Yep.
At least.
Awesome. That is very cool. Yeah, Harmony Bends is that course up in Missouri. Yeah, there's nothing like that in Texas.
Nothing like that in Texas.
Not one bit.
Nope. And I gave myself 2 days to learn that course.
Goodness, that is a tough course to learn in 2 days.
It was not a good decision.
Well, hearing that and then knowing that you went out to Vegas and you're back in Texas currently right now, and I have not checked your PDGA at all, so I actually truly don't know the answer to this. But what are your tour plans for this year?
Yeah, so I don't have a tour card. I think, we talked about that when I met you in December. It was hard to get into it because at the time I wasn't 900 rated, but I wasn't an 887 rated player. Like Texas, it's really hard to get your rating up because, the competition's tight and, some other things. And so when I was able to get my, like the day before it was time to register for all the elite events, I got to 900. It was nuts. I was like, it was meant to be. And so I was able to register for the first third, and I couldn't believe I got into it. Like we were sitting at our computer, just everyone's clicking. We're like, click, click, click. And then I got into the second part of the tour and once marched besides Champions Cup, which is totally reasonable because it's, only 40 people were allowed to get in. And once March 10th rolls around, I'll be able to sign up for the last third.
That is super awesome.
Yeah, and there's a super, we weren't initially going to go, but there's a strong possibility that I'll get to go over to Europe and play the major out there. I know.
That's really cool. That's still like a bucket list item for me. I got to make that happen at some point. So I hope y'all get to go. That'll be super cool.
Yeah, super cool.
So basically, it sounds like even though you weren't able to get your tour card coming into this year, it sounds like you're going to pretty much be able to play almost all of the events for excluding a few. But that is super cool. I'm super excited for you guys in general. Like that's going to be awesome.
Yes. One of my biggest goals, though, is I want to get to the point where I can qualify for Throw Pink. So that's like one of my biggest goals.
You were close this weekend. That that little tag that they have on UDisc was up on your name a few different times there. So I think there's a lot of time for that to happen, and I feel like there's probably a pretty good chance on that as well. I know the answer to this, but I figure I will ask it anyway. How are you guys getting to tournaments this year?
Yeah, so in November when we decided like we're gonna go on tour, we kind of started to plan out to sell our house. And plus it was a really good market at the time too. It's like, we'll sell our house, we can get an RV, we can put it on our land out in Trenton. I was like, it'll be great. And so once May rolled around, we were able to put our house on the market and we sold it. And so we took that money, we bought a Dodge Ram dually and a 42-foot RV. So that's what we're going to be traveling around in. Except for I don't think we're going to, if we go to OTB, I don't think we're going to take it to OTB. I think we're going to fly.
That's a good move. There's I feel like when you're at OTB, not enough people talk about this, but like it ends up being very sketchy every year. Like you always hear, like, I think somebody got their bike stolen last year. I think somebody gets their bike stolen like every year. It's find a safe place to park when you're at OTB, especially van lifers. So yeah, I don't blame you for not taking your RV out there, especially just getting all the way out to California and going up to Oregon with the RV is so hard and expensive anyways.
It's very expensive. Because when we went out to Nevada, you know, gas is much different than it is in Texas. And we were like, oh goodness, thank God we didn't bring the RV because we'd have been paying diesel. We're like,
Yeah, and then you get into California and you see those gas prices and you're like, oh, all right, cool.
I'll just buy appetite right now. Maybe have it later.
Well, when we first met, that's one of the very first things y'all talked to me about. You knew I had a truck and a fifth wheel, and y'all had just bought a truck and a fifth wheel. So you guys were just like, and I was like, ask away, like anything you want to know, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever you want to know. I haven't talked to you guys about it since then. How's the fifth wheel life been going?
Yeah, so I think you and I talked about, we didn't even get it out of the parking lot before hitting something. And so it's been in the shop since we still don't have it. Like, yeah, he warned us. He was like, it's gonna take a while, I guess, since, you know, everything's still so backed up, and I guess people, I don't know, aren't working in the factory. So it took a really long time to get in the roof and the parts. Because if you didn't know, if something happens to your roof, you have to replace the whole roof. Like, you can't just do a section like you could with a house or something like that. Like, you have to do the whole roof, and it's expensive. So get insurance. We have insurance, thank God. But get insurance, because it was like 11. I think it was like 11 grand just for the roof.
Yeah, I know that when you have like hailstorms, depending on how much your RV is worth or something like that, sometimes hailstorms just total an RV because of the roof. They damage the roof. It has to be replaced. If your RV isn't worth enough at that point in time, like, your RV is totaled. And so it's like, it's terrible when stuff like that happens. And I actually had no idea that had happened. So I'm sorry to hear about that. And I know firsthand how horrible it is to, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, it's our connection every now and then is a little lagged, and so it's hard to tell when the other person's talking. But like, it's I just don't know why it takes so long. But I know firsthand how long it takes for RVs to get fixed.
Yeah, we did do one pull, and that was from where we parked it to the place to get it fixed, and it was great. Like, the dually pulls it well. I mean, it is truly made to pull some heavy things, because when we went to purchase the dually, I was sitting in the back, and so we went over the speed bump, and it was like, and I was like, oh my God, what was that? Like, I almost got shot through the roof, because I mean, it was so stiff, you know, because it's supposed to be like that, and it was alarming. But once you get in the dually and you hit those bumps, it's just that's like sitting in the car with nice airbags.
Yeah, I actually never knew this, because I didn't do a lot of trailer pulling or anything like that earlier in my life, not until I decided to buy a fifth wheel. And I had no idea that whenever you drove around a truck like that without a bunch of weight in it, it's kind of awful. It's not a comfortable ride.
No.
But as soon as you put 14,000 pounds in the back of it, it's like, oh, this feels kind of nice now. It's perfect. Since we've been talking kind of about the year's plan in general, before we get into Steph's curious questions and then talking more specifically about Vegas, do you have any specific goals for the year as a whole? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, so one of them we talked about was getting into throw pink. Most of it was just take every shot, every round, every tournament, and just learn from it. There's no reason at this point to get upset or frustrated in my play, because it's like, I'm like, my ratings, not my rating, sorry, my PDJ number is the lowest out here. Like, I don't expect to come out and do amazing all the time. So it's just, I really want to kind of keep the mental game very level, keep it logical, not be super emotional or rational. That's the biggest goal. Otherwise than learning from all those mistakes. That's the second biggest goal. And I do want to get into all like the qualifying tournaments at the end of the year. But I also, hopefully by the end of the year, want to pick up a nice like deal with someone, like a manufacturer. So those are kind of like
those are all awesome goals. I love that number one goal right there is a nice process oriented goal of just like keep within myself. Don't try to do anything crazy. Don't have unrealistic expectations. Like, keep within myself. That's awesome.
It'll keep you sane, first off, because if you're letting rounds bother you, or even just shot after shot bother you, it's like, first off, you're going to die young because you're going to be so stressed out, and it's not a way to live. It's like, first off, you're out here playing disc golf. Like, if you haven't seen the view in Vegas, like, it's gorgeous. And so it's like, there's nothing to be upset about and mad about. It's like, take it as it is. Stay happy.
That is fair, and I could learn a thing or two from that perspective. Most of the time I stay pretty level-headed, but every now and then you get competitive and you're like, meh, just so mad for no reason.
Right? It's like your fifth bogey and you just missed a putt. You're like, I'm gonna lose my mind. I can't handle this.
Okay, I'm glad you do understand that.
Wholeheartedly.
Perfect. With that being said, are you ready for Steph's curious questions?
Yes, I am. That's the part I was looking forward to.
Perfect. I love it. So for those of you who don't know, on this show, my wife's name is Steph. And every week I tell her who's going to come on the show. She goes and figures out 3 questions that she wants to ask that person. And then I just write those questions down and I ask them. So for me, it's great. I have zero responsibility in this. I just have to ask the questions. So, question number 1. When you aren't disc golfing, how do you like to spend your free time?
Oh, yeah. So, we have 3 dogs. We have a German Shepherd, a Corgi Beagle mix, and a Chocolate Lab. And so we're usually spending time with them. Like, we'll take them to the park or, we'll kind of walk around with them. But disc golf is like, at least for my schedule, is very, very time consuming. And so I do spend a lot of time working on that aspect. Otherwise, we're either watching disc golf or we're spending time with our family.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know out there, I know everybody gets like addicted to disc golf and we're all addicted at some level. When you do it for a living, it's crazy how life consuming it is. And I don't think you truly, I don't think people truly realize that till they get into it. And you're like, oh, my life is disc golf now. All right, cool.
It is because it's like, if once you get done with your rounds, it's like, now you got to go lift some weights. Got to make sure you're maintaining all those, little muscles and ligaments and stuff like that, staying super strong. But otherwise we would, like, now since the tour's, up and going, like, we were watching all the way back to 2021 Vegas videos, all the men's, all the women's coverage, like, how much can we learn before we go out there? So that's kind of what we do with, or we're going to be doing with every tournament. So there's not going to be a lot of TV time, which is okay.
Yeah, TV time is now disc golf round time.
It is disc golf round time.
Perfect. All right, question number 2. What is the weirdest fact you know?
Oh my goodness gracious. I don't know.
And if you don't have anything off the top of your head, that is just fine. But yeah, I think what was the oh goodness, I had one that I thought of when I asked that question. Give you plenty of time to think of a weird fact. And it was, now I can't remember either. So now we're both stalling, and I don't know. We're both just like, I don't know. If we think of a weird fact later, we'll give it to you.
Okay, good.
Question number 3. If you weren't playing professional disc golf for a career, what would you be doing?
Yeah, so I'd probably still be teaching kids how to play softball, pitching and stuff like that. Otherwise, I probably would have started a family. That and I don't know how many people watched the live coverage, but somehow like Terry Miller figured out that I decorated cookies and like did pastries and stuff like that. Like I would have been still doing that as a side gig too, because it's so fun. They were like decorated sugar cookies and they were like really good, like taste wise and appearance wise. I'd probably still be doing that too.
That's awesome. That is something that's a weird fact about you that I did not know. Which sort of satisfies question number 2.
Yeah, I guess that's a weird thing. But yeah, baking and really cooking since like 6 or 7. It was like things we did with my grandmother and my aunt a whole bunch. I say we because I have a twin sister. Not that anyone knew that. So now that's cleared up.
Yeah, I didn't know. That's another weird fact, and I didn't know that either. Awesome. We're getting all the answers out of this one. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is the end of Steph's curious questions. I like having my soundboard in a nice and accessible spot now. I don't know if I can even like lift this into the frame, but it's nice and easy to get to now. It did not used to be that way when I was doing mobile setups all the time. All right. We get to we've brushed on this several times now, so it feels weird to introduce it, but we actually get to talk about Vegas now. So we went over that it was your very first Pro Tour start, apart from a Silver Series you played last year, which I don't think counts because it wasn't an Elite Series. And you only practiced, like you said, 2 days for Harmony Bends, which is a tough task to accomplish there. And so your very first Disc Golf Pro Tour Elite Series, and you finished top 10. You finished in 9th place. How does that feel?
After it settled in, it was like, I actually did that. Like, I was like, I can't believe it. Because I was still kind of, and I shouldn't be like, I was still kind of focusing on all the things. I was like, man, I should have made that putt, or man, I should have did this disc. But like, once we were driving on the way home, and CJ's like, I'm just so proud of you. I can't believe you did that. And I was like, you know what? I'm proud of myself too. And I can't believe I did that either. Like, that was not the goal. It was not the expectation. It just kind of, happened that way. I think a little bit had to do with, I finally got to play up to competition. That's why I always played up in softball. It's like, well, I can play with 18-year-olds. It's like, well, I can play with the girls who've been practicing, so much longer than I have.
No, that is super cool. And it's funny that you kind of made a face at first. You were like, well, while I was in it being competitive, I wasn't as satisfied with it. But, after the fact, like, yeah, I was like, yeah, it was pretty good, huh? It's cool that you said like that wasn't like the expectation or anything like that going into it. What were your expectations going into Vegas?
We actually really never labeled anything. After like the first round when I was, sitting where I was like, let's make cut. Why not? Let's make cut, and maybe let's, no matter what, if you make cut, you got cash. So I was like, let's make cut and get some cash. But most of it was just play the best of your ability, like play the course, to the best of your ability.
Perfect. Great process goal. I always love those, not being too results focused, even though it's so easy to do that sometimes. I know that you ended up playing on camera earlier this year for your sudden death, the end of the round and then sudden death playoff when you were playing Straddle the Brazos against Stephanie Vincent earlier this year. Was that your first experience on camera?
Yes. And that actually didn't bother me as much as round 1 in Vegas. Like that one was just, I was like, oh, cool. I knew a lot of the people there, and it was a small crowd. And honestly, we didn't even know we were going to get filmed until it was happening. I think GK Pro came out there super late to film the men's round. We're like, oh, that's cool. And they're like, yeah, we're going to stay to do the women's. I was like, what? So it was actually more cool than it was scary.
Okay, awesome. But then after that first round you shot even par, tying you for fourth place in Vegas, you knew you were going to be filmed the next day for the whole round.
Yeah.
I see the sudden intake of air there. So it was, you already alluded to it being a different feeling. How did you mentally prepare yourself for that? Or how did it feel during the round even?
Yeah, so like the night before, I think I was battling not letting it bother me. I did sleep, so it didn't bother me to the point where I couldn't sleep. So that was awesome. When I got there, I was like, you have it in front of camera. It's fine. Everyone's like, just ignore it. Play your game. And I was like, okay, great. And so when I got up there, my routine is a tad longer than everyone else's. It's not taking up 30 seconds. Like it's more like 15, 17 seconds, which I think is appropriate. But when I was seeing on camera, I was like, I feel bothered that this takes so long. I'm going to kind of keep it short, which was horrible to do. Like it threw me off. Like I have to stick to the routine person. So I played the first 4 holes like that. And if you didn't look, it was like bogey, double bogey. It was like par, bogey, double bogey, par or something. And I was like, you know what? This ends now. I'm going to stick to my routine. I don't care what any of these people look or feel about this. It's like, I'm just going to stick to me. And so it got a lot better from there, but it was unfortunate the way that I didn't just stick to it initially. I think I would have been more comfortable off of the first tee pad if I did so. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I did not get to watch that round's coverage, so I didn't see that. So thank you for the explanation on it. But it is, I do remember back to being filmed. I identify strongly with the stick to your routine type person, because I am very much that person as well. And I used to be a much slower player. You talk to anybody in DFW about me like 3 years ago, I was significantly slower than I am now. And I remember getting on camera and like, it's weird. You become self-conscious about those things. You're like, things you never really thought of because you didn't really care. You're now like, oh, like, what are people going to think about me doing this? It's like, well, those aren't productive thoughts for playing whatsoever.
No, not at all. It's not. It's like, it's absolutely not what you should be thinking about.
So you had a bit of a rougher round there. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't good round. So it didn't keep you on second card. But then the third round, you battled back onto chase card again, and you were filmed for your final round as well. What was the difference between that first full round on camera versus the second full round? How did things change there?
100% sticking to the routine. Like it was 100% sticking to the routine, and then not like letting myself get caught up in what someone else was doing, because and also some people may not know, on that first filmed round, I was with Missy and she shot a fantastic round and I was a part of that. And so like, I see myself, not making good. I was overreading the wins. I wasn't making great disc choices. And I'm like, Obi. And I'm like, so I was like, well, she's doing this, she's doing that, so I should be able to. I was like, there's no reason. And so I was like, I think in the second round that was filmed wasn't like that. I was like, stick to yourself. If, Holland's an excellent player, they're all excellent players. So it's like, if anything, it's like, let's watch and learn, because this is so cool to get to watch them do it in person. It was super cool. And if you didn't know, to watch Holland shoot -9 on that course, it was really cool.
Yeah, she shot incredible. And you and Holland have very similar skill sets. So it'll be, yours have not progressed as fast yet because she's been playing longer. But like, it's very interesting. Like you're on a very similar path that she is right now. And so like, that's, at least that's how I equate it in my mind. So that's a really cool thing to watch you guys on the same card together when I was watching that earlier this morning. So that was awesome.
Very, very cool.
Were you intimidated out there at your very first Elite Series tournament? Or after you kind of had a great start round one, did you kind of feel like you belonged there? What was your mindset going into it?
Yeah, in a modest way, like before I got there, I wasn't intimidated, just because like I know I have the ability to do what they're doing eventually, like, because I know all it is time. And so I wasn't really intimidated at all. And once I got into round one, and the way the round went, I was like, this is great. I was like, I do belong. You know, it was like that 98% I know I belong. And then it was like, okay, 100% belong. And so I wasn't going to let myself get intimidated. The only thing that was a little intimidating was like watching like Missy in Holland just drain like 35 footers. It's like, I do that in practice, but I didn't do it in the round.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So
Well,
like,
awesome. I think that's another like big barrier to being on tour full time is like feeling like you belong on tour. So it's awesome just like from the get-go you were like, no, like I feel like I belong out here. And I think that that's a huge testament to like why you finished as well as you did out there.
Absolutely. There was only one thing that kind of, because I haven't found my friend group yet. Like, I mean, I have plenty of friends and people that I know, but it's like, I'm like, one of the rounds CJ was working, and so I was out there by myself, and I was like, well, this is just little old me. And then you see, you know, a different, you know, someone else is on Infinite and I'm on Innova, and they're like a group of 4 or 5, and, you know, it's like Colin, Stacy, and all them. And I'm like, man, I can't wait to find my little group to get to play with. So it's not just me out here by myself.
Yep, that is definitely a big one, and I definitely understand that. I played plenty of those solo practice rounds right when I got out there, because you don't know everybody. Everybody does kind of have their little friend groups, but I guarantee you will meet some people
For sure.
and you'll have a blast out there. I'll be out at Waco. We should definitely go catch a practice round. It'll be later in the week, but that'd be cool. See if we could get CJ off work and get him out there as well. It would be a good time.
He's so cool. We 100% should do that.
Awesome. Well, we'll make a plan for it. Steph, it is spring break week, so Steph will be out there with me as well. So that would be a great time.
Awesome.
And last question in this little Vegas segment here. What was the most important thing you learned playing with some of the best FPO players in the world?
Yeah. Putting really, really matters, especially for that course. It's like, you know, because like a lot of us have the distance, like me and Holland have very comparable distances, but like the biggest difference was she was making putts. So I kind of already knew that, but that was like something that kind of really alerted me. It's like, we need to get going on this. That was the biggest thing.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. It's, I don't know if I'll have to look at the statistics because I haven't looked at them recently, but in the past several years, putting has been like a really big difference in FPO compared to MPO. Like there's a few standout performances in MPO that really make a difference, but in FPO, if you can just moderately increase your putting level over the field, you can get so many more strokes right now. And especially being on a course like Vegas where you're not really hitting trees or anything like that. So typically you're having putts, and on those more open courses, just being able to make putts makes such a huge difference. It comes down to more of a putting game than it does down to like a throwing game when you're in the woods having to hit more technical lines.
Absolutely. 100%.
Let's see here. Okay, so you told me you're a routine person, and so I'm very glad I left this in here because I like asking people about it. Do you have any like set routines that you consider important for your disc golf game or even just your life in general?
Yeah, so I like to one of the big things for me is I like to early to bed, early to rise. So it's just my circadian rhythm. That's what I have to do. And so like I'll get up, I'll eat breakfast. It's usually eggs and some fruit and yogurt. And then after that, I'll go putt for an hour. And then once I kind of do that, and I really honestly do this every day, like I'll putt for an hour, I'll go out to the field and I'll work on like 300 and in. Sometimes it kind of only gets to like 175 to 200 in, sometimes 250. It just depends on how much time I have. And then I'll like go play around. But like when I get on to the course and it's tournament time, like it's really important for me to, when I'm doing like my movements before it's time to throw. It's like I'm actively visualizing the angle I want to release on, and I'm trying to make my body do it. It's like trying to stay intentional. Because like when I was rushing things, like things weren't intentional. So it was like I kind of threw it on this angle, but then it turned out to be this angle. Like it was nose up, sort of that angle, because it just wasn't fully intentional because I wasn't committed to that shot. And so like I'll even do that with my mini. I'll have like a 10-footer and I'll put my mini down putt or put my mini down, do my shots. Like I'm not gonna change like something so small because like I'm very routine. It's got to be that way.
Gotcha. No, I like that. And I, once again, I identify with routines sometimes to an unhealthy level. I tried to break that towards, I've been doing better about not being as strict lately, but I love having those routines in place. Do you have a set practice routine when you get to tournaments or when you're away from tournaments, or is it just kind of like a feel-based thing?
So if I like went to Vegas and something was like, so for example, my forehand ups felt weird. And so like after my practice rounds, I will go and I worked on forehand ups. There was this tiny little 9-hole course and it was perfect for it. And so, I did some of that and I did some putting, but it's usually what doesn't feel comfortable that day. Like when I went down to Austin for a prickly pear tournament, like my backhand timing was, I don't know what happened. I lost it. And so like after each round, it's like we went out, it's like, even if I don't go and use it tomorrow, at least we can go and try to work on it. And so we would go kind of try to fix or kind of refeel what was supposed to be.
Yeah, gotcha. So it's a little bit like whatever seems to be not quite working right, you put a little bit more time into it, but you kind of just work on everything around that as well.
Oh yeah, but like the thing that I like, if I'm at home or like, especially before we even went out to Vegas, like I spent like several weeks working on backhand timing, like making sure I was getting to like this point every time. It's like I did so many drills, and this is actually something for new players. It's like really work on your standstill drills. Like it is life changing. Like you could go, like if it's raining, go to a baseball facility and work on your standstill drills. Like you don't need the distance. Like it's easy to pick up because they're all at the end of the cage. Like it's magic if you can figure that part out. Just yeah.
I love that advice. And I've never even thought about when it's raining going to like a baseball facility. Really, really quick on that, since you're familiar with them. Obviously, you have a place that you worked at before, so I feel like you probably go there, but maybe you don't. Are you able to just go into most baseball facilities and maybe just like rent a spot? Like, how does that work?
Some like ours is family owned, so we do have opportunities for people. We've had cricket players come in and use our machines to, they bounce it off the ground and do their thing. Places like I believe DBAT, they like you have to have a membership and you have to pay when you get in. So you have to like you'll have to pay like I think it's over $100 for your membership, and then it's like a certain amount for your cage. So I would personally avoid those. Like I would try to do family owned, and there are some. I know there's plenty around Texas for sure. I'm not sure about some other states that aren't so heavy into sports.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I would imagine for people up north in the winter, if they aren't able to, I know a lot of people put like nets in their garages or basements, but if they aren't able to, if they have a local baseball place that might allow them to throw into some nets for hopefully a reasonable cost, that could be a great plan. Or
Absolutely.
for, I don't know, the people up in like Seattle and Oregon, Northern Oregon, probably are so used to the rain they don't even care anymore. But no, I don't know, maybe maybe they're just like, this is life, so it is what it is. But that might be helpful for them too. So do you separate? Well, I'll ask it a different way. Are you more of a on-course practice person or more of a field practice person?
I think just because because I'm still so new to everything, I spent a lot of time learning how to throw in a field. Now that things like it's even crazy. Like my warm-ups to go play don't take nowhere near as long. Like I don't have to throw my bag 3 times to get the feeling. Like I'll throw my like half a bag or a bag and then I'll go play. But I think field work is where it's at. It's so helpful. It's so useful. And then I'll go play my round. Or even when I go play my round, like I'm still practicing. Like if something didn't quite come out right, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to, or I'll be like, I think I can do this disc. Let's see how much I can make this disc work. Because, you know, you might be on a course where it's like, well, my zone's going to finish too much, but my harpoon will push a little bit straighter and then give me that little finish. So we have a little course near us. It's Dash's track, and it's an woods upshot course. It's in it because it has elevation. It's up and down. It has different types of terrains, and it has different putting, you know, elevations. It's like, that's where I go to play my rounds sometimes.
Gotcha. Wish it had a little bit better baskets, but other than that, Dashes is a great time.
Right. Right.
Well, that's awesome to hear. And you'll be getting you to put in a lot more effort when you're on tour to do field work, just especially with it being your first year on tour. You will be having to learn so many new courses that it becomes like a challenge to get in the amount of field work that you want to get in, because you're having to get so much on course work in that is trying to prep you for actually knowing exactly what you should be doing out there.
Oh, absolutely. That's actually something I've been a little concerned about, because these tournaments are so back to back. And so like I won't have like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to practice. You know, it's like we might be rolling up to the course, you know, Monday morning. And so, and it's also like when you start practicing those courses, like, I don't know if it was just Vegas, but my fingers hurt so bad. Like I've had blisters on both these fingers since I got there. And so I'm hoping it's just because it's so dry out there that's how it happened. But I'm a little concerned about doing that much throwing, because it's so much throwing.
Yeah, it's a lot of throwing. I will say Vegas is known for like the cracked fingers or the more blistered fingers, because it is so dry out there. That seems to happen to multiple people every year. But yeah, it's so much throwing. Every now and then your fingertips just are kind of raw. They don't feel good.
No, they don't. Like my pointer finger is still raw from Vegas. To be fair, it's a lot of big drives, but yeah, my pointer finger is very raw.
Yeah. And for those of you out there, the harder you throw, the worse it hurts. It doesn't feel better. When you get really good snap on a disc, you feel it. It exists.
It does exist. I was out on Vegas, like it was my middle finger doing the most bleeding, and like I'd have to pull back because I put KT tape on it, just kind of give it a buffer, and I was having to like pull it back, alcohol wipe it, poke the needle in there, drain it. I did it like 4 times on round 3 on Infinix. I was like, this is because it hurts so bad because the pressure.
Ouch. That does not sound fun at all.
No.
Oh gosh. And you talked a little bit about working out earlier in the episode, but do you have like a workout routine that you follow on tour, or that you're planning to follow on tour? And how does that differ from maybe a workout routine you were doing in the off season?
Absolutely. So for me, like I have like weaker areas, which is like my right shoulder and like my left hip. And so it's really important for me, especially this off season, to do like maintenance. So I'll do more bands, more just lighter weight stuff, not working on like the bigger muscles. Like I'm working on those little stability muscles. Yep. And so I did some of that this off season, but this off season we did a lot of like weightlifting, like trying to work on, you know, getting those bigger muscles stronger. That way I could throw either the same or further with like less ease, or just being nice and smooth. Because I feel like it's not always super accurate to just put 100% of your body into it every time. Like it can't be like that. And so I wanted to get stronger, so I didn't have to put so much energy into my throws to get the same distance. But yeah, most of it's just like maintenance. A lot of like rotations for like my back, and then lateral movements for my hips. So it's really important for me to keep like my glutes strong and my back strong and my core strong. So
all extremely important areas to keep strong in a throwing sport. That's awesome. I love to hear people's workout routines, and especially when they know like I have my right shoulder and my left hip are like a weakness, which is super interesting, because they work When you're talking upper body to hips, at least, a lot of times lines are running diagonally. So it's really interesting to see that that is the case of things that feel weak in you for throwing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And like, so I hear some people like they're like, my back hurts, my back hurts. So I'm like, strengthen up your booty. Like strengthen up your booty, strengthen up your back and like your the lateral side of your hips. I'm like, it is life changing when you're like when those muscles get back in shape, how much pain you're not in. Because like when I started the off season, like my hips hurt, like my back hurt. And then now it's like I don't have any pain. I have tons of mobility and no pain.
That is great to hear. Yeah, a lot of people like you should have a strong core. A lot of people when you hear core think just like your abs basically. Mm-hmm. But core basically includes all of the musculature from basically the top of your thighs all the way to just right under your chest. That is your core. And not only does it need to be strong, it needs to be mobile when it needs to be, and it needs to be stable at all times. So if you can do those things right with your core, you are not going to have any issues with that. Now I can preach that all I want, but I still have back pain. So I have some stuff to figure out.
I get it. For a little while, the same way I was like, I don't need to do this. I'm young. And then I was like, ooh, that hurts. I need to do this.
Yeah, No, it is amazing. And you were saying earlier, like, oh, I'm not 20, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting over here about to turn 32. Like, oh, sorry. You're sorry. That makes it even worse. Oh my goodness. All right. So our last segment here, before we get into the questions we always ask at least, is a short fan segment we have here. There were a few questions. I got around to posting it a little bit late, so we didn't get as many questions, so that's my bad. But first question comes from Garrett. You won't have to guess who this is in just a second. Garrett said, make sure to ask about hooligan and disc barn. Not sure that's a question, Garrett, but I like you. We still got to play some ping pong together. I actually met Garrett at like the same time I was meeting you and CJ during the epic ping pong battles. So yeah, plug hooligan and disc barn out there.
Yeah, so Gary and I kind of met each other, like really got to know each other at the end of last year. And so he's actually my main disc sponsor. And so the thread is a lot like an Undertaker. It's a great fairway disc. It's nice and straight. It doesn't have a super stable finish. Like it really is a lot like an Undertaker. I like the plastic too. The other disc that I really loved was the Vibe. It's supposed to be a lot like a Wraith, but I kind of see it more like I see the flip and the turn like a Hades, but it has a little bit more finish than a Hades.
Well, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm not as familiar with their discs, but I can tell you one thing. Hooligan Disc has my favorite named disc of all time, because if you've ever played a practice round with me, you know that I pretty much when somebody smashes a disc, I just yell yeet. Yeet. And so for them to finally name a disc yeet is perfect.
It is cool.
But I was one of those people where I started saying yeet like sarcastically, like I was making fun of it. And then as all things happen, I just ended up incorporating it into my vocabulary. So I was like making fun of yeet, and now I say yeet. And so it's a real problem. But that disc name is fantastic.
It is fantastic. And for those who don't know, the yeet is quite stable. So the whole idea was I should be able to throw this as hard as I can and it's not going to turn over. And that's exactly what it's going to do. Seriously.
Perfect. That is a great name for a disc. So had to put that in there. The next question. Sorry.
They're working on 2 other frisbees. One's going to be a mid-range. It's supposed to be like kind of like a Buzz or a Mako. It's called the Rope because the idea is to be able to just throw it on a line and it's going to stay on that line. And the other one that they actually have the prototype for is the Cash, which is supposed to be a lot like a PA3. And they do fly a lot like the PA3s.
Awesome. Actually, I know we're in this is so perfect. I'll just ask this right now because I'm curious now. Sal asked, will you be doing an In the Bag soon?
Yeah, so I believe I've talked to a couple people about this. So I may do one with either Garrett or I guess most people don't know this, but I'm starting to do some collaboration with like GK Pro, and so they were talking about doing it in the bag, but they were gonna do more of like a in the lifestyle. So for like things that I enjoy, like wear like my what type of shoes I wear, what type of clothes that I choose to wear, or even the sunscreen. So or even my snacks. So those are the kind of two things we're gonna be trying to work on here in the next couple weeks.
I need to see some cookie decorating in that as well.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I'll try to make sure I decorate a couple and post it just so y'all can see. It's really cool. It's a science. Like when I learned how to do it, like and did all the research and stuff, it is a science. You have to have you have to put a certain amount of water because like you have to have an outline and then a filling. And so if your outline isn't just right, you have to completely redo your outline. And it is unbelievably time consuming to do it. It's a little rough.
I would never have known that, but I could see it because I'm a terrible baker in general. So you couldn't catch me making anything properly. But I can't imagine actually making it look and taste good at the same time. Mm-hmm. So that is props to you for that. But with the in the bag question, like obviously you are sponsored by Hooligan, you are sponsored by Disc Barn in that same sense, which they're a retailer. And then you're sponsored by Legit. Shout out to Ryan Draper and Ben Marks down there in Waco. Those are some legit guys down there, no pun intended. Love them. We'll be seeing both of those guys at Waco because they're also our Waco TDs. But with the bag question, you're still semi-open bag because Hooligan doesn't have a full lineup. I saw you throwing a Trust out there. I saw you throwing a PA3 out there. What do you have the majority of in your bag?
The majority is a Discraft. It was just because that's what I've been throwing since we started playing because, we got into playing because of Brody, which kind of led into Paul's videos. And so that was just it was the discs that we were aware of, because everyone has the same sort of everything. But as time went on, we did start kind of experimenting with like other discs. Like I really like Prodigy's approaches. So it's like, I like their putting discs, I like their approach discs. And odd enough, I have like one Lone Star disc, and it's a Harpoon. And so I have like an understable one, a beaten in one, and then my stable one. And that's what I use for all my forehand stuff, or even my backhand. Like if I need something to kind of do a little hyzer, I'll throw a Harpoon.
Okay, awesome. We had you froze on my end for, I don't know, maybe 5 seconds there. Oh, but it came, no, you're good. But it came back in like, and everything was fine. So I think everything's good. I wasn't really sure. I was like, I'm going to wait this out and see what happens. But I think everything is great. But that is awesome to kind of get an idea of all the things that you throw. So that's very cool because that's the first thing I noticed watching coverage was like, oh, she's a little all over the place with disc here.
Oh yeah, even my drivers, like I have my Graces, like I have like I don't know, I think it's the Royal Plastic, I don't know, it's like the normal Graces, and then I have an Orbit Grace for my headwinds, and then I have Nukes. Oh, in the D2, so I have a D2 that kind of puts that's like a Zeus spot.
Is that Orbit Grace red?
It's pink.
It's pink. Okay. So I couldn't tell what color it was on camera, but I was like, is that a Orbit disc or is that a Halo disc? I can't tell. So I was just curious what. Very cool.
Pink. It was a pink. It was my Nuke.
Okay, gotcha. Well, awesome. And then Sal also asked, what was your go-to forehand disc at LVC?
Can you say it again? I think you're cut out too.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. What was your go-to forehand disc at LVC?
Oh, yeah. This is actually something I did want to talk about. It was my blue Page Pierce Nuke. So it's a bit more, it's not as beaten in as my pink Nuke is, but when I come to Texas, I have like the ESP Ezra nukes. And so that's what I throw all around Texas. But when I got there, it was like they weren't going anywhere. I was like, why? And someone's like, we're in elevation. I was like, oh. So it was, if it was a blue disc and I was holding it as a forehand, it was a nuke. Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. So we kind of have more of a idea of what you throw now. I like that. What player, this question's from me, by the way, my fan question. What player are you most looking forward to playing with on tour?
Yes. So I watched Kristen Tatar play all last year, and she was, the person at the time who had like my skill set. And so she's the one I'm excited to meet the most because she seems quiet and nice, and I really want to watch her play her game in person while playing with her, because I did watch her play in Waco, but I want to like actually playing with her. That's like, I can't wait. And
that'll be
with Paige Pierce, just because her backhand is, I think her and I have a lot of the same kind of pop on our backhands. Like we rotate really quick. And so I'm excited to watch her throw in person as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome to play with either or both of those ladies at the same time.
That would be extra crazy.
that would be super cool. I can say Kristen is just as nice as you think she is.
She seems so.
Yep, her and Silver both they're awesome. So the two amazing people to be around. All right. With all of that being said, we're down to the two questions we ask every single time, trying to get your advice out there. What is an actionable piece of advice you would give to a beginner player looking to get better?
Absolutely. Work on throwing understable discs first. If someone's handing you a driver and it's pretty beefy, don't do it. Right? Just like learn how to throw a hyzer, learn how to throw some hyzer flips. I wouldn't put a driver in your bag until you are comfortable with an X step. So I would put like a Mako in the bag. I put an Undertaker in the bag, or even a Passion or an Instinct, or in a Buzz and some like decent putters. Like I wouldn't do like a Sky God. Like I would make sure I did like a PA3 or a Luna, because I think the most important part of learning to throw is just making sure you know your angles. And the name of the game is smooth. So you don't have to throw hard to throw far. Like that's not really the idea. Like it's angle control. So smooth is fast, smooth is far.
Awesome advice. With the same question, but towards an aspiring pro player, would you have a differing answer at all?
Yes, but I guess in a different way. If you're an aspiring pro player, like know what your worth is, because when you start talking and getting around these companies and stuff like that, especially when you're new, it kind of feels like they want to lowball you a little bit just because you're such a newbie. Don't take any deals that you don't feel good about. And if you don't feel good about, who they are or their vibes and stuff like that, listen to your gut. Otherwise, like playing wise, learn your angles the best you can and putt as much as possible. Like I read a book, it's called Golf is Not a Game of Perfect, and you really honestly should be spending like 80% of your time working on 300 and in, and most of that should be putting, because putting will win you tournaments. If you could just consistently make your 30 footers, you're gaining some serious strokes on some girls.
That is a fact, and that is both of those pieces of advice are great advice. I said those were the last questions, but I actually have one more question. What are the next few tournaments you are playing so that people kind of know what they are and can follow you at those events?
Absolutely. So the next 3 tournaments will be Waco, and I think it's the Open at Austin, and then it's the Texas States in Houston. After that, I have a week off, and then we're out to Tallahassee for the Music City Open.
Awesome. That will be a great time. I will see y'all in person at Waco. That's the only event I'll be playing this early part in the year, because technically I'm playing an event later in the year. But I'll see y'all there, but I'll be following along with you on the rest of the tournaments throughout the year for sure. So that will be very cool. with that, thank you so much for joining me this morning on the podcast. And before you go, I don't know if we plugged everybody, but if you got anything else going on, feel free to plug that and let people know where they can follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do most of my main stuff on Instagram. So it's Caroline_DG_12. And so that's where you can kind of like follow what I'm doing. I believe we're supposed to have my like first round of tour series discs are coming out. They're getting here on Thursday. And so we're going to start posting and selling them and stuff like that. And then I'll have some of my like tour series gear coming out, I think in the next couple months. And then my other tour series discs will be at least starting in May. So there's quite a bit to look out for those.
Awesome. That is a lot of great news. And I love to see that you're just getting that support right away. That's super cool to see that happening in the community, and it couldn't be happening to a better person. And how do I get lost in my notes at the very end? There we go. So we plugged all the sponsors. We plugged where people can find you. Thank you again for coming on the show. Thank you to all of you guys at home for tuning in. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share, review, do all of those things. And I don't know if you saw this, the last episode I posted before Aaron's that I posted yesterday, at least. I said I'd be posting every other week going forwards, at least for right now. And then now I've posted an episode yesterday. I'm going to post this episode today. So right after saying I'm posting every other week, I'm posting back-to-back episodes and back-to-back days. So I don't know what's going on with my schedule, you guys. I'm sorry about that. It's a little bit up in the air. At the very least, I will be posting at least every other week. And then sometimes when the schedule works out like it did this week, maybe you'll get a bonus episode. I'm not sure. But thank you again, Caroline, for coming on. And thank you to you guys for tuning in. I will get my life figured out one day. But for now, we'll see you next time.